morning, Malaysia. This is Matthias Chang once again from Future Fast Forward. Today, I would like to focus on one issue, that is the continuation of the cover-up by our Prime Minister, Finance Minister Najib and the entire MSN fake news in Malaysia. It's surprising that after all the evidence that's come out thus far in Singapore, in Switzerland, and the DOJ claim in America, we have still the attempt by the authorities to cover up and the refusal or non-action to prosecute and bring the culprits, the criminals, to justice. Bearing in mind that this 1MDB case involves money laundering, corruption, cheating across international borders, for which 7 countries are still maintaining and conducting criminal proceedings and prosecutions. So, I'm sure all of you will be surprised by a statement on 8th March that was reported in the mass media, and I would like to quote to you what was published in the Sun Daily. Okay? Please take a handphone and photocopy this page, and I will discuss in more detail this particular page. Sun Daily, 8th March 2017, with regard to the statement by Najib as Prime Minister. You got that? Okay. And then we have the second page of the same report. Please use a handphone and photograph this page. Alright? And then pay attention to my remarks. Okay? Now, first and foremost, I will read to you those passages marked in yellow to show how devious and how subtle is a cover-up. 1 Malaysia Development Berhad's former executives are no longer under Bank Negara Malaysia's BNN watch list, said Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib Abdul Razak. Najib is also the Finance Minister, said Jasmine Lu, I Swan, and Casey Tang King Chi would only be placed under BNN monitoring again if there's new information regarding any breach of law under the central bank's jurisdiction. Repeat, they will only be put on the watch list if there are new information regarding any breach of law under the central bank's jurisdiction. Under the central bank's jurisdiction. Conveniently overlooking the provision of penal code and other relevant legislation for which they have contravened and committed offence. He goes on to say, quote, based on the outcome of investigation, enforcement action was taken against the company, 1MDB, not individuals, based on existing laws with consent from the Attorney General Chambers, whereby BNM issued a compound letter to 1MDB for failing to fully adhere to the orders issued under the Financial Services Act 2013. 1MDB has already fully paid the compound, Najib said in a parliamentary written reply to a question posed by Wong Chen, PKR Kelana Jaya MP. It goes on to say, Najib said since BNN investigation was initiated on 1MDB, its management and board of directors have given full cooperation to the central bank. Other than handing written answers and documents sharing, 1MDB board of directors, current and former staff, had been interviewed by BNM with witness statements recorded in detail, he said. BNM on July 2015 had issued a notice to track the 2 individuals to assist with the investigation on the 1MDB's controversy. Both were sought for investigation under the Exchange Control Act. Okay? So, by this statement, it is very clear that there's some ambiguity. While the paragraph says that the board of directors and some former and current staff assisted in the investigation, it is not clear whether in fact Jasmine Liu and Casey Tang, who was overseas at the time of the investigation and for which Bank Negara has issued a notice for them to be located and for them to report to Bank Negara, it's not clear whether the current and former staff that gave statements to Bank Negara included Jasmine Liu and Casey Tang. Be that as it may, key question must be asked why these two individuals were complicit and part of the cabal that was involved in the money laundering is no longer on the watch list. Just because 1MDB has paid the fine. Now, isn't it unusual when billions of money are lost, the only penalty is a company that pays the fine. Not one individual is prosecuted. Whereas in Singapore, bank officials of BSI and Federal Bank were prosecuted and imprisoned for their crimes. Bank officials, okay? Yet not one bank officials from Bank, Islamic Bank, has been prosecuted. We were told that Bank did pay a fine. DOJ has made specific allegations against the officers of 1MDB. MO1 referring to the Prime Minister, 1MDB Officer 1 referring to Casey Tang, and 1MDB Officer 3 referring to Jasmine Liu in the forfeiture action. So yet, they've been critical witnesses and under investigation by DOJ, yet these people are not prosecuted. It is incredible, if I may remind all of you, because people have very low attention span and forget quite easily facts and figures. So may I remind Malaysians once again that in the criminal proceedings in Singapore, in the prosecution of branch manager Jens Fred Sturzenegger, there was evidence in court that he had a conversation with Jasmine Liu on March 19, 2013, wherein Jasmine Liu was one of the authorized signatory of the account whereby money, the incredible 681 million US dollars, the 681 American pie, deposited by Jolo into an account called Tenor account with the Federal Bank, for which Jasmine Liu was a signatory, was linked in the proceedings. And yet, given that nexus between Jasmine Liu as an authorized signatory to the account where money was transferred to, the PM's private account, no action is taken, no explanation. Now, can I go back further, all right, and read to you the press statement of Bank Negara way back on 3rd June 2015. I will read in part because it's a long statement. The purpose of this press statement issued by Bank Negara is to provide clarity on the role of the central bank with respect to any resident entity, including 1MDB, that makes investments abroad or obtains offshore borrowings under Section 214 of the Financial Services Act 213 and under the Exchange Control Act 1953. that was in force prior to 2013. All investments that exceed 50 million ringgit per calendar year, or any offshore borrowings that exceed 100 million ringgit by resident entities require the central bank's approval. In relation to this, all submissions that were made by 1MDB have had to comply with the same approval criteria that is applied to submissions by other business entity. If the criteria is not met, the submission will be rejected. No leniency or special exceptions were accorded to 1MDB. And in accordance with the legislation administered by the bank, the following developments will trigger formal investigations. 1. When monies for which approvals were given are not used for the purpose indicated in the submission. I repeat, when monies for which approvals are given are not used for the purposes indicated in the submission. 2. When incorrect or false information are provided for in the submission. And 3. Failure to comply with the conditions for the approval. And as part of the investigative process, the bank will issue a legal directive requiring information pursuant to the relevant acts the central bank administers. This will require board and management of the entity to provide information within a specific time frame. Under the Financial Services Act 2013, the penalty for failure to meet this request can result in a fine of up to 50 million or up to 10 years in prison or both. So non-compliance with this provision, this three, can result in a fine of 15 million or 10 years in prison or in both. Alright? It goes on to say, with respect to 1MDB, a formal inquiry has commenced to examine any contravention of the central bank's rules and legislations. This has involved the issues of legal directive requiring information from the entity. The central bank is also taking in statements from individuals involved in the governance process and obtaining information from other relevant domestic and foreign parties. In addition, Bank Negara Malaysia has forwarded information received from foreign authorities to the relevant investigation agencies after obtaining the permission from the foreign authorities. 3rd June 2015. The key point to take away from this press statement in 2015 is that any non-compliance, any contravention will result in a 50 million fine or imprisonment of 10 years or both. Following this press statement, there was a press statement 9 July 2015, whereby the Bank Negara, as part of the task force comprising of the AG Tan Sri Abdul Ghani Patel, Tan Sri Zeti Akhtar Aziz, Governor, Tan Sri Khalid Abu Bakar, IGP, and Tan Sri Abu Qasim Muhammad, Chief Commissioner of the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Agency. In this press statement, they declared there was a raid on 1MDB officers to confiscate and to take control and custody of relevant documents, all right, relating to all these transactions. Unfortunately, any documents relating to the personal account in AmBank by the Prime Minister could not be obtained because, it says here, regarding the freeze orders issued on 6 July 2015 against 6 bank accounts, no bank accounts at AmBank Islamic held by the Prime Minister on that date were frozen because the bank accounts had already been closed on 30th August 2003 and 9 March 2015 respectively. So, Najib, little bird, flew out of the cage just in time before the raid. Now, the question is, why would Bank Negara raid 1MDB offices? Because criminality is involved, crimes are involved, contravention of the Financial Services Act as well as Exchange Control Act were involved. That's why it was a raid, all right, by 4 principal officers of our country, of leading institutions. And then, lo and behold, bearing in mind that any offences would fetch a fine of 50 million ringgit or 10 years imprisonment of anyone found guilty, on the 11th of April 2016, we have this remarkable statement by Bank Negara. Total copped out and covered up. It says this: following receipt of the consent of the Attorney General today, Bank Negara Malaysia has issued a letter of administrative compound to 1MDB for failure to comply fully with the directions issued under the Financial Services Act 213. This includes requirement, I repeat, this includes requirement for 1MDB to repatriate monies remitted abroad following the revocations of the 3 permissions granted by Bank Negara Malaysia to 1MDB in 2009, 210 and 211. 1MDB has also failed to submit evidence and documentation specified by the bank to justify its inability to fully comply with the repatriation order. 1MDB has been given until 30th May 2016 to pay the compound. The payment of the compound marks the conclusion of the investigation by Bank Negara Malaysia and on the contraventions of the rules and regulations of the Central Bank. 28th April 2016. The key word here is that by this directive, Bank Negara has revoked the 3 permissions granted by Bank Negara in 2009, the first transaction with Petro Saudi joint venture, 2010 and 2011. The latter part with Abu Dhabi. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means those 3 transactions, once permission is revoked because of non-compliance, right, with 3 conditions, if I may repeat to you again. Bank Negara said that the conditions, the permission approval to remit monies overseas, all right, for which approval by Bank Negara is required, was revoked. That means those transaction is illegal, unlawful. It's been revoked. Why? When monies for which approvals are given are not used for the purpose indicated in the submission. When incorrect or false information was provided in the submission, and failure to comply with the conditions of the approval. These 3 non-compliance resulted in the revocation. Therefore, when you revoke approval, that means the transaction, right, retrospectively, is no longer legal, lawful. Why? One, if you recall, 1 billion was issued to be transmitted from 1MDB to a joint venture. That money conclusively has been proven, instead of going to the joint venture, went to the pockets of Joe Low via JP Morgan to RB Corps in Switzerland, and thereafter into the pockets of Joe Low. So the money was not meant for the joint venture to invest in oil and gas assets, all right, but was pilfered and money laundered. And information to obtain approval of Bank Negara was misleading, falsified, and incorrect. Okay? And you recall, after the joint venture was signed on 29 September 2009, on the assumption that the criminal Saudis, Wahhabis, would inject assets into the joint venture company. And when that found to be fraudulent, the joint venture was revoked, cancelled, replaced by some superficial, fraudulent Islamic finance. That too turned out to be a fraud. And yet, the Prime Minister on 8 March gladly announced to the whole world that 2 key members of the cabal who were instrumental in the whole transaction, facilitating Joe Low and him in that fraud, is not indicted in any way, having sabotaged the banking and financial services of Malaysia, involving M-Bank, Bank Negara, and other banks. If there was no sabotage, destroying the integrity of the banking services of Malaysia and the integrity of Bank Negara, why would Bank Negara revoke the 3 permissions? But lo and behold, I, a lawyer, acting in my absolute legal duty with my client, reporting to various jurisdictions overseas, resulting in the freezing of accounts. We still control and have back monies of these culprits in their accounts. Is charged under SOSMA for sabotaging, and under Section 124L of the Penal Code for sabotaging the Bank and Financial Services Act. One account got away in Malaysia because it was closed and the money disappeared. The other accounts was frozen. 6 accounts were frozen by Bank Negara. How come these people were not charged under 124L of the Penal Code, read in conjunction with SOSMA? Why chose me? You see, the insidiousness of this cover-up on the 8th of March by this numbskull Prime Minister, Finance Minister, and yet the whole entire leadership of UMNO, BN, just stood by as if nothing has happened. And all the mass media, Straits Times, Star, Sun, Utusan Malaysia, Utusan Melayu, whatever, has not issued any condemnation of this cover-up, this insidious crime. Now, you will recall, this scumbag Nazri has issued a challenge to Tun Mahathir to take him on in the election in his constituency. Now, Tun Mahathir has told him, come and debate. And Saleh Kra previously tried to say the BMF was a scandal which involved the criminality of Tun Mahathir. And you will recall in my previous address, I brought 7 volumes of the BMF report. And I challenged anyone from UMNO MKT to prove by a paragraph, a sentence, a word, that Mahathir was criminally involved in that transaction. And I showed in that report there were provisions recommending criminal action be taken against the culprits and civil action be instituted to recover the monies. Now, at this moment, if I may, with your indulgence, spend some time to explain to you the law regarding such a contract, such action by one MDB entering into forced JV, forced loan agreements, which ultimately, in essence, was a money laundering scheme, a fraudulent scheme. Okay, an effect of any scheme, although looks legal, but in actual fact is unlawful, illegal. The principle is very clear. Please ask your lawyer, both within Malaysia and overseas, this principle. If I may sum up to you, what is the effect of an illegal contract? The general rule is that if a contract is illegal or unlawful, it is void. And no court will enforce an illegal contract or recognize an illegal contract. That's why Bank Negara, on finding the hanky-panky, the money laundering, the fraud that was perpetrated on them, revoked the permissions. That means by revoking the approval and permission, Bank Negara said the whole world that the entire transaction, the scheme, the objective was fraudulent, was illegal and unlawful. And no court will enforce it. It gives rise to not only civil action to recover monies unlawfully diverted to the pockets and enjoyed by the crooks, but also criminal prosecution. Okay? This is a very important principle. It is universal principle of law throughout the world. And then, just to tell you that this is not just a strange principle for the common law in USA or UK or Singapore. We have a case, okay? I've copied this judgment of the Federal Court in 2014, reported in the Law Journal 3 MLJ at page 370. Hold on. Yes, page 301. This is a case of the Federal Court on the principle whether a court will enforce an unlawful contract or a contract that contravenes a statute or law. Okay? Now, Bank Negara said the three transactions 2009, 2010 and 2013 contravenes two laws, the Financial Services Act and the Exchange Control Act, thereby making it unlawful, illegal. The contravention came apparent later, but in substance, the transaction is illegal and fraudulent, okay, unlawful. And of course, of the judgment, the court made reference to provisions of the Contracts Act. We have a statute also. Besides the Financial Services Act, the Exchange Control Act, the Contracts Act says very clearly by its provision what will happen to any contract that is illegal, unlawful, or contravene statute provisions. Okay? Section 24 and Section 66 and what have you. It says very clearly, in those circumstances, the contract is void. And any person who obtain the benefit of those monies must return the money. Alright? And yet, Bank Negara in the final statement, press statement, says there's issued a directive to 1MDB to bring back the money, which was transmitted to Jolo. They knew where they were, the monies. There was a deadline, 30th May 2016. There was a responsibility, a burden to bring back the monies that was diverted and laundered. They didn't do it. And all the punishment was for what? A small fine. Can you see? The blatant, insidious cover-up by Bank Negara. As a result of that, payment of the compound, case is closed. Tutup. Thinking that we Malaysians are so stupid. So let me read to you, alright, this case whereby the Federal Court, comprising of Justice Raus Sharif, President Court of Appeal, Abdul Hamid Mbong, Federal Court Judge, Ahmad Ma'ruf, Federal Court Judge, Abu Sama Nordin, Federal Court Judge, and Ramli Ali. In 2014, the judgment was dated 4th March 2014. It says here, quoting a very old case, right, in Cook and Rawlins, the judge cited this, it's perfectly settled that where the contract which the plaintiff seeks to enforce be it expressed or implied, is expressly or by implication forbidden by the common law or statute, no court will let existence to give effect. Alright? This is English jargon, okay? Saying legal jargon said that, right? A court will not enforce an illegal contract. And then the same principle was again adopted by Justice Colson in a case called Lincoln against Alice, 2009. And the court held, it seems clear that the underlying principle or policy is one of deterrence, that the courts will not encourage illegal acts by allowing claim based on them. And then this federal court referred to another judgment of federal court in a case called Trace Perdana Berhad against Muhammad Effendi bin Hamdan, 2096 MLJ 783. And it states here very clearly, the law on this is quite established. Once it's enacted by legislation, the parties are required to comply with any provision. Parties must comply with such provision. It's not for any person to waive legislative requirements by an agreement unless the legislation allows it to be done. Legislations enact laws which, in its opinion, are for the benefit of the public. It is not for the courts or for anybody, for that matter, to say it need not be followed. Okay? Every law must be followed. This is what federal court says. Every law must be followed. No one can say, I need not follow the law, the statute, the act. Not even a court can say that. Once there's a contravention, the court must take notice of that contravention and hold that it's illegal, unlawful, and cannot enforce the act, the contract. And then the court, federal court, quoted Section 66 of the Contracts Act, which says, the effect of a void contract or agreement is provided under Section 66 of the Contracts Act 1950, which reads as follows. When an agreement is discovered to be void, or when a contract becomes void, any person who has received any advantage under the agreement or contract is bound to restore it or to make compensation for it to the person from whom he received it. I repeat once more. When an agreement is discovered to be void, or when a contract becomes void, any person who has received any advantage, like Joe Low, PM, the money is in his private account, under the agreement or contract is bound to restore it or to make compensation for it to the person from whom he received it. We, the taxpayers, had to pay for the loans. Alright? These are money borrowed in the name of the government. If we default, we have to pay it. It's rice money. Rice money has been laundered corruptly and fraudulently, taken out of the country, went on a spin around the world to various banks into the pocket of Joe Low, then entered to various bank accounts, alright, and benefited a whole bunch of the members of the cabal. And under the Civil Law, Contracts Act, alright, whoever benefited must restore the benefit or advantage or make compensation. Alright, make compensation. And then of course the federal court also started a Privy Council's case in England, Hanath Kaur against Inder Singh, and said and reaffirmed the principle. This is the federal court, right? In 214. Okay. And the federal court ordered a restitution of the benefit advantages taken by those who have committed the fraud. It results in the contract being void. Okay. Now, just in case someone asks me what's a void contract, okay, it's a technical term. A void contract is a formal agreement that is illegitimate and unenforceable from the moment it is created. Okay? It is a formal contract that's illegitimate and unenforceable, illegal at the time of creation. Okay? So, there you have it. The entire 3 contracts, 209, 2010, 213, as declared by Bank Negara, having revoked its permission and approval, alright, is void. And the result of being void, consequences follow. And yet, our government, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and every institution involved in upholding the law and ensuring that the people of Malaysia will not be cheated, has not taken any action to recover monies. No action. There's not even a criminal action or court case pending, except my case. I've been charged for under SOSMA and under the Penal Code for sabotaging the banking and financial services in Malaysia. How unjust can this be, you tell me? And yet, our Prime Minister has the cheek and the audacity in the press statement on 8th March to say, those 2 culprits, KC Tank, Executive Director, Jasmine Lu, are no longer on the Bank Negara watch list. Can you imagine that? And I suffered imprisonment in Sungai Buloh prison. And I'm still open to further prosecution. Can you see the audacity, the criminality of this regime? We can't forgive them. We can't let this pass, my dear fellow citizens of Malaysia. Please, have the courage. If you keep quiet and continue to be armchair critics, talk big in coffee shop, talk big in private restaurants among yourselves, and open your mouth and have the audacity to open your mouth to criticize Tun Mahathir or me as his barking dog, his crony, when we are at the forefront exposing this crime, this heinous crime, this injustice. Don't ever complain if, as a result of your silence, your inaction, and your cowardice, you chose to let this scoundrel, this cabal of criminals get away with their crime. And if it's God's will that they be returned to power so that you will suffer more from your oppression and the tyranny, don't you ever complain. Oh my God, Malaysia is broken. Oh my God, we are down the shits. We're a failed state. Let's pack our bags and run. Well, if you don't have the guts or the backbone, pack your bloody bags and run. Because we don't need you in Malaysia to create confusion or talk, empty talk and noise. And to promote by your inaction, your silence and your confusion, fake news spew out by the MSM, controlled by BN. It does not require courage to stand up as one force, as one voice, to answer the call of the mighty God. You have a free choice, you have the free will. Stand up and be counted and do justice. For if you fail to do so, you will be punished by more oppression and more tyranny. Your children, your grandchildren will suffer. What if you say you're a Buddhist, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're a Hindu, you have faith in God, then prove that your faith is unshakable. No use declaring your faith in God Almighty, be it a Muslim, Hindu, Christian or Buddhist or what have you, when God gave you the free will and God has told you in the Holy Scriptures, in the Quran, in the Bible, to expose injustice, to follow His commandment, and you turn your back, you are a hypocrite. You are a hypocrite. Because your first primary duty, utamakan Allah. Put God first. And because you're a citizen of this country, you must also put our country first before your self-interest. Don't expect other people to spill their guts, their blood, that you may be free. Is that fair? God doesn't ask you to sacrifice too much, but at least do the bare minimum. Speak out. Because when the whole country speak one voice, one focus, and that whole one flag, our national flag, cry with one voice, our national anthem, for king and country, we will prevail and we will win. But if you allow hypocrisy, selfishness, self-interest to take over, then I'm telling you, my dear friends and fellow citizens, you deserve the government you elect, or did not elect because you take any action. And may I warn you in advance, the consequence will be dire. Don't think, if hell break loose, you may be exempt from the wrath of the Almighty, for your cowardice in action. God has given His commandment. Obey God's law. Utamakan Allah. Please, throughout history, all tyrants have been overthrown. Not one escaped justice in one form or another. So therefore, I hope when you go to mosque to pray, when you go to church to pray, to any temples to pray, please ask your God, there's only one God, to give you the courage of your convictions to uphold the rule of law, to fight against injustice without fear or favor, so that peace, harmony will return back to Malaysia, and we will become a proud nation. Once again, a nation with self-respect and dignity, and not walling in shit, insulted and humiliated by a bunch of rascals, scumbags, criminals. I've often said it to all of you. It doesn't take much if every morning you get up in the peace and quiet of early morning, on your knees, prostrate before Allah, surrender to His will completely. Have absolute faith that He will protect you, defend you, and guide you under all circumstances, in the face of all enemies, adversities, and challenges. Please do that. Because if you don't do that, you can never get that courage, the determination, and the resilience. God will give those qualities to those who pray to Him. There's no use going to church, mosque or temple, ask for bounty from God Almighty, that you may be prosperous or rich or well-to-do. If the fundamental issue, your soul, your spirit is neglected, and you wallow in the shit established by this cabal of criminals, then you don't deserve anything better. But I believe there's still time for you, and I repeat once more, Every morning, the first thing you do when you get up, prostrate on your knees. Surrender to the will of God. Have absolute faith that He will protect you, defend you, and guide you under all circumstances, in the face of all adversities, enemies, and challenges. Do not let Najib and his cabal get away with lies, cover-ups, and crimes. I just showed to you. Crimes have been committed. And by our own laws, we can take action to recover what's been lost, not only just money, our liberty, our dignity. And if we really love our children and our children's children, we cannot sit idle and stand by and watch this as a spectator. This is not a football, Premier League. This is reality. The end game of this crisis will be either we triumph and bring liberty, democracy, and prosperity to our country, or we be trampled by the boots, the tyranny of this regime. It's your choice. You decide. Don't blame anyone. And don't you dare condemn anyone, because you have not earned the right to condemn, criticize, because you have not lifted a finger to save your country, to help your family, your children, and grandchildren survive. With that, I conclude my remarks, and once again, appeal to you. Please, keep faith with God Almighty. Do your bit. Be proud what you can do for the country, and don't let others carry the heavy load. Once again, thank you for your attention, and I bless you. A good day.